On this journey to achieving your life's potential, we, Edelweiss Tokio Life Insurance, will partner you right through. Go on, dream unlimited, dare unlimited, live Zindagi Unlimited. Edelweiss Tokio Life Insurance.
"2020 has been a grave reminder of things that we've been procrastinating for a very long time. But here's some good news for you. Today's special session will help you identify how you can start your financial journey in 2021. Welcome to our 5th edition of Be Future Ready Financially, a webinar series where we invite top industry experts to address your financial needs and help you get ready for the future financially. I'm Pallavi Arun Verma, and this session is going to be very special as this sums up the entire series and is a wake-up call for everyone who's yet not invested or maybe invested inadequately, but aims to restart or rejig his financial journey in this year. Without much delay, let me introduce our viewers to our first panelist, Vivek Bengani, Chief Agency Officer, Edelweiss Tokio Life Insurance, is here with us. Vivek comes with over 16 years of professional experience in sales and distribution, business and product development across financial services. Vivek brings with him a passion for change and innovation, a hands-on attitude, and creating high-performing teams. Also, a second expert on the panel is renowned financial expert and author of Yogic Wealth, Mr. Gaurav Mashruwala. Gaurav Mashruwala is an author, he's a financial planner, speaker, and columnist. I welcome both of you to this panel.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pallavi.
So let me start with you, Vivek. What is that first thing you want to tell people who are over 40 or 45 years and they haven't started investing?
I think the first thing, thank you, Pallavi. Actually, this is a very great opportunity to talk about it, and it's a new year, so people are really looking at the prioritization here. Let me just set first thing. I think 40, 45, whatever time that you have thought about that you should start planning, I think the first thing I want to say them is that they have a lot of people who are in the same situation, so they're not alone. And I think the second thing that I want to tell them is that whatever time you have realized that you need to start planning for your future, I think it's a good time. First of all, I think a lot of us find ourselves in this particular position, and like you mentioned, 2020 allowed us to put our prioritization once again. And I really think the rules of investing and rules of financial planning don't really change. It's just that now, if you have a financial goal, probably the time available to you, or what you had planned for, if you are having a shortfall in that, I think that needs a special attention. Your ability to probably experiment is a little bit constrained. The first thing which I would tell anybody who has picked up this priority this year is that I think you are in great company. You have a lot of help available, and I would say that it's not yet late to do that. But you are going to need financial help in terms of experts to be able to guide you through this process. So I think that would be my first advice. You've come to the right platform to get that expert help to be able to plan it.
Surely. And Gaurav, even I would like to take your opinion on this. Every time, there's something happening in the markets, which we saw in the last 1 year or so, it's bound to make the investors jittery. So every time markets are on a high, investors feel that they've missed the bus. So what is your advice to such individuals, such people who every time they see anything happening in and around, and they are so much into the news that they sort of forget their own goals and they are tend to flow with the news? So what do you have to say on this?
Pallavi, two things. One is financial planning is not an activity, it's a habit. So whatever age you develop, once you have a habit, you will reach. That clarity has to be there. Habit comes from within. It's an internal thing. So if you have your goals in place, if you have your targets in place, you will reach. The problem is people have not done that.
Hmm.
So they look outside.
Right.
मार्केट कहाँ गया, गोल्ड कहाँ है, डॉलर का क्या होगा.
Hmm.
Don't do that. Look within. Your goals won't change based on outside conditions.
Right.
You won't change your daughter's education or marriage because Sensex has gone up or down. We don't change our vacations. Then why look outside? Develop a habit and you are fine.
Right. In fact, Vivek, just to add what Gaurav just mentioned here, that it's not an activity, but a habit
Correct.
to be a part of your daily life, so that whenever there's any crisis or anything, your goals remain unaffected. But tell us one thing: how often do you find such people who they facing problems in handling this financial FOMO or this fear of missing out? And what is your advice? How should they handle it?
Absolutely, Pallavi. I think what Gaurav mentioned, and I just want to give a minute more on explaining on this part, that why it's so important to think about it as a habit. And we at ET Life, when we talk about it, we almost think about it that financial planning is as equal to the way you look at your health, right? Your health goal is that you want to be fitter, you want to live longer, you want to have a life where you're going to be, less sick, and you can actively enjoy your later years in life. You want to do all of that, and for that you need a disciplined approach. Now, many of us realize once we are crossing 40 and 45 that we haven't done really very well with our health, and similarly we end up realizing that we have probably been a little bit lax, or not had earlier the time to pay attention to our financial planning. And I think therefore it dawns upon us that now we need to start. I think the first important thing which I always recommend, and when I talk to a lot of my customers, when I'm even talking to my financial advisors, they do ask me this question: sir, अभी क्या करें सर, वो तो 50 years के हो गए हैं, उनके
Right.
पास तो समय ही नहीं है, क्या करेंगे? My first advice to them is that, first most important advice is that, fine, ask them one important question: what made them realize that they need to start financial planning? The moment you ask that question, it actually opens up the door in finding out what would have happened that led to this. And I've generally found that there are four things which have happened. The first is that they may have had past obligations, debt, or any of those things which actually did not enable them to save enough money. The second thing which I have seen is that people have not built the habit, so financial discipline has not been there. Actually, the third thing which I have seen, which is the most common one, which I think you also referred to, from the FOMO perspective, is actually that they do have money, but they have put that into those kind of assets, or allocation has happened to those assets where what we call as investable surplus is not available. And therefore they always have this feeling that I don't have enough to invest. For example, a classic example, when I look at one of my cousins, he's got 3 apartments. He lives in one in Mumbai. He's got two, one in Bangalore and one another in Mumbai. You ask him a question, he will always say that, I don't have money to invest. And I ask him, what will you do with these 3 houses? And no, they are not my savings, they are my assets. So I think people have that notion, which is very important. And I think the final one, which I really think that is important to think when you are looking at this question, is that what do I want to do from here on? I think if we can answer that question, it immediately puts you into a good position to begin with. I just want to add a second part to it. And again, I go back to the health discussion that I was having. When you want to fix your health, you get a health coach. You get a yoga trainer, you go to a doctor, and you get a diet
Right.
plan for
That's
yourself.
absolutely right.
And we realize that unless we have that help, we will not be able to get our health back into track. Very surprisingly, when it comes to managing money and financial planning, people tend to overestimate their capacity that they can do it themselves. You know, and I think that is the second part I want to tell people, that if you have been late, then please get expert help, because they can really address this problem for you. So I think these are the two things I really recommend that they start with. And I think that can be a really good beginning for them in 2021.
So this brings to my mind that, you said, Vivek, that they are late, but this realization is very important. And at what stage in their life do they realize this? So let me just take a quick reaction from Gaurav on this. That Gaurav, how would you approach, or how would you suggest a person who's 30 and a person who's 50, and both of them realize that, I need to start my retirement planning, or at least I need to start thinking about my finances in a systematic manner, maybe through SIPs, or maybe some portion in insurance, whatever the portfolio may be. But what is the kind of approach at 30, and will it be different at 50? What is your take?
Actually, Pallavi, no. There is no difference. The process remains same.
Mm-hmm.
Decide your goals, build up a contingency fund,
Mm-hmm.
go for the health and life insurance, sort out your loans,
Okay.
then investment,
Mm.
and retirement planning, and then make a will, succession plan in your set. And keep reviewing this every 3 months.
Okay.
The moment you do that, you are fine. It
Mhm.
doesn't matter what age you start. If you start early, you have to put in less effort. If you start late, maybe a little more. But don't get depressed.
Mm.
Don't give up. A lot of
Sure.
people say,
Sure.
"Abhi ye umra mein karu." And I tell them, look, when I go to doctor, I don't decide whether I'm treatable or not. Let doctor
Right.
decide I'm treatable or not. Let me decide whether you are treatable or not. You don't decide.
Mm.
And then process remains constant.
Okay. So this is Gaurav's idea of how you should be approaching your finances, and be it 30 or be it at the age of 50. Maybe the amount could be different, but it's important to start. So let me come to you, Vivek.
Pallavi, the biggest problem is
Yeah.
people don't decide their financial goals,
Yes.
which is going within, which is what I said earlier.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have the clarity. And the reason they don't have it is whether you are doing yoga, health, or wealth, going within is difficult
Right. Right.
because then you are going to commit to your own self.
Mm-hmm.
And committing to our own self is difficult.
So how should be the approach to bring that realization and to commit to our financial goals, and most importantly, as the first step, setting up those goals? Gaurav, first let just have give the answer, then I'll move to Vivek. Yeah.
Well, I give them a simple technique.
Hmm.
And because otherwise I'll have problem dealing with clients. I ask them to take a selfie with the
Selfie. Okay.
family
Mm-hmm.
and next to it put all your goals
Okay.
and make a DP. Now, I didn't know what DP meant. My daughter told me DP. I thought it's depository participant. Then I realized it's display picture. Take a printout or whatever, keep it on your softball or a phone or something.
Hmm.
Keep looking at it and you are set. Don't do anything else. After that, whatever decisions you take in life, look at that DP and do it. I call it my GDP. Don't
Okay.
be bothered about country's GDP.
Hmm.
My GDP is my goals and dreams plan. And yours.
Great. Great. Okay. Okay. That's a wonderful idea, I think, and all of us who are watching this can really try this. But talking about trying on your own, I'm reminded of all the DIYs of this world. And Vivek, as you were mentioning that when we are not well, when we're ill, we go to the doctor, we go to the right person to get treated. But when it comes to our finances, we usually don't do it, and we feel that maybe we can Google it out, and maybe we can listen to some of our friends, maybe some relatives, and they might give us a good advice. But individual goals could be different. My what is right for me may not be right for the other person, and what's correct for him or her might not be good for me. So according to you, what should be the right approach? And as I mentioned earlier, that for somebody who's 30 and somebody who's 50, according to you, what should be the key difference, and how should both these individuals at different stages in their life should be handling their finances?
I think Pallavi, while Gaurav mentioned this quite clearly, that I think the process remains the same. I think the process of financial planning doesn't change.
Hmm.
I think, but what happens is something that now that when you are looking at, either you have missed out on certain opportunities, or that the time that you have to plan has gone down. I think the number of years that you have, I think we need to take some extra precaution in here when you are planning. So the step number one, it becomes is that now compounding will take much lesser time for you to play out. And therefore, I think it becomes important for us to see how you are going to allocate your capital. That decision becomes a little bit more critical.
Mhm.
I think the second thing which becomes even more important is the prioritization of your goals. You know, now that you know that the time available to you, or the affordability of an error, or things not going your way, I think that time for your ability to recover from that, is going to be less for you. It becomes important for you to actually go ahead and plan your critical needs first. So, for example, if I am short on life insurance, if I'm short on health insurance, any of those things, I'll prioritize them first, and I'll not leave any gap in there. If I'm already running debts, and I know that that is something which is there, and I now have a very short window, or maybe not much longer window, maybe 15 years, maybe 11, 12 years of earning, I would first try and make sure that I am addressing those pieces in there. For a 28-year-old, or a 32-year-old, or a 30-year-old, I think he or still has that ability to recover, to change, and to experiment with how he would want to get there. I think for people who are starting late, or and I keep adding this part, that if you've missed out on some. So I give this example that and currently you started with that discussion very clearly, that people in March were thinking that whether they should invest in equity or not, and they missed out on this opportunity. Now again hesitating and not going out and starting to begin that process, or participating in it, you're going to miss out the next opportunity.
Mhm.
So, that's why it becomes very, very important that, first of all, now you know that you have short time, your time is running out, or you have not done enough allocation. I think it becomes important to address these two things. Third,
Right.
your ability to take risk probably goes down a little bit, not from a point of view of purely asset allocation, but more from a point of view that whether you will be able to experiment and have chance to recover from bouts of low return periods, which will always happen in the market. So I think those two things become. So when I look at people, when I'm talking to them at 50s, or even in late 40s, my first recommendation is secure. Look at life insurance, look at health insurance, make sure that those are done. Unless you have not taken care of them, don't venture out, because it can really put you back in there. I think the second part would then be, make sure that you are managing your liabilities very well. And then you have a clear horizon of starting to allocate money in there. Many a times, I have also seen one more thing, that people had been prudent in doing financial planning, but there can be setbacks. For example, last 10 months, people may have actually got impacted because of job loss. Business has got impacted. They had not planned for this kind of a disruption happening, and therefore their financial plans may be they need readjustment, as I would call it. I would not really say that it's missing out on an opportunity. And that's important, and again, to look at how you will plan from there onwards.
Surely. In fact, Talking about salary cuts and job losses, which were very evident in the year that has gone by. Gaurav, I would like to take your opinion on this. That how you mentioned about, we don't cancel the functions at home. If there's somebody has to get his daughter married, they won't postpone that. But it still remains a fact that there've been job cuts and salary was reduced, earnings were reduced. How has this impacted the retirement planning, in general? And is there a need to change the way we planned our finances this year? I mean, the way we've been doing it so far, but you think, has there been a prominent change, and what has changed according to you?
Pallavi, this year, at least we all have not seen such times in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
It could have happened earlier, but we don't know.
Right.
And I've always been saying that maintain a contingency fund.
Mm-hmm.
Now, those who had contingency fund,
Right.
I've also maintained that get out of loan as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Now, people didn't do that. They had loan, no contingency fund. Now, if you have not done that till now, ensure you build up your contingency fund. Number one.
Sure.
It may take some time, but do it.
Mm-hmm.
Then ensure there is health insurance. I've had enough cases where people lost job and health cover was from the employer.
Mm-hmm.
They lost
Right.
job and they didn't have health cover. There were people who had pay cuts and job losses and had loans which they could have paid back. They did not. What they did was earlier, they kept investing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when things are good, you feel it's an excellent strategy. But repeatedly, we are saying,
Mm-hmm.
get out of loan.
Right.
Because when there is a pay cut and job losses, if you don't have EMI, you are much better off. Keep focusing on these things and you will sail through your whatever pay cut.
Mm-hmm.
Maliv, if I may just add to this, point which Gaurav just mentioned here. And typically when we talk to clients, we find it very interesting that maybe it's to do with the bias in their, in the way we look at things. And there was a very active discussion happening whether we should actually use the moratorium on credit card payments and things like that. And when we talk to them and we ask them that you have money lying in another account which is earning 4.5%, and on a moratorium you will be paying about 18%. Do you really think this is something wise? Yeah, but I can save and invest. And you, just by making sure that you make that payment itself, you're going to have 14% gain. Why would you not go ahead and do that? But I think this is where I highlight one part, which is our ability to look at these objectively is generally compromised when it comes to money. And it's so important that at that point in time you have expert help, because somebody who can actually explain to you objectively, look at your assets and liabilities, and then look at your asset allocation on where you want to be. I think this is something which has become more and more evident in the last 10 months, where I have seen enough of my clients, and at all ages, keeping money in their saving bank account, but actually also carrying credit card loans or many other loans in there. I think this becomes a very simple exercise of financial discipline. If you do that, you can actually be more efficient in the way you are allocating your money. I think there's a second part which is coming again and again, and people, as human beings, we have biases in our mind, the way we look at finances. And
Right.
whether you are at 40 or whether you are at 50 or whether you are at 35, those biases run, because the way we have been brought up, the way we look at money and risk and everything. And again, I reiterate that when you have a plan in front of you and you have expert talking to you, I think they just highlight those biases and you end up taking the right decisions. I think that's very important to keep in mind with this.
Surely. Vivek, we've been talking about what people have missed and how they need to evaluate that, how they need to realize. So, could you help us understand what could be the positive signs that signify that we haven't missed the bus and we still have the time. So, be it whatever age, but how do we handle the situation once the person has realized that okay, I haven't invested enough or I haven't covered my liabilities. We were talking about the loans and being debt free, because as they say, debt free is also stress free. So of course that's another priority. But in case a person has too many liabilities, what kind of a role insurance play in protecting the family from any worse situation if in any case any emergency comes or there's a personal loss? What would you suggest, Vivek?
Absolutely. I think the first thing which I said is that you need to make yourself secure. Downside protection comes much earlier than looking at upside potential. And insurance comes into play for downside protection. The first thing that you do is protect your downside. And I know the last 10 months, this is one realization which everybody has got. And the good news is they haven't missed the bus on this one. They can, as of today, invest in insurance, both life and health, and I think they can immediately start benefiting from it. And the first important and the another piece which I really think is critical for them to remember is that every passing year, particularly at higher age, the cost is only going up. So therefore, the first step to do is just look at the total set of liabilities and ensure that you're covered on term insurance on that.
Right.
We actually we just launched our new life insurance plan, a term plan called Zindagi Plus. Unique feature is it covers both husband and wife in there. We call that as a spouse benefit in there. It's something which helps you better plan because liabilities may not just be at your end, but even your spouse may have some liabilities in there. So that's the first step. I think the second one, Gaurav also mentioned about it, saying that if you have an employer health cover available to you, and if your age is increasing, later on buying a health insurance is going to become difficult. It's better that you start right now because then your cover can continue up to age 80 at a much lower 80 or even later than that at a much lower premium rates than trying to enter at 50, 55 or 60. And many insurance companies may not even give you a cover after 65 in there. So I think that becomes the second part in there. I think the third thing which is important, and I'm going now back to looking at how you allocate your assets in there. And yes, it is very recently I was talking to a financial analyst, and it was very interesting the way he put it. He said, go back to March 2020 and look at what was your growth expectation from there.
Mhm.
You know, and when you look at the markets, they've just done one thing that they have gone down and they've come back to that level. And it's important to keep that perspective in mind that you haven't really missed the bus. It's just that it's taken you 9 months to come back to the point from where you started. So if you have that perspective, I think there is enough opportunity to still go and invest in there.
Sure. In fact, I also want to bring to your attention individuals who have a rather shorter career span. They could be sports persons, they could be athletes, anybody, somebody from a field of cricket or anywhere, or maybe performers, creative artists, those who really don't work for 40, 50 years. I mean, their working life is relatively smaller. So, Gaurav, first I'll come to you on this. What is the kind of advice you give to such individuals if you've come across such clients, if they are into a field which requires a lot of physical exertion and which may not allow them to work for work beyond 40 or maybe 50 for that matter, and otherwise also like in the kind of life that we are having right now, even in metros, a lot of people are thinking of early retirement because they don't want to work, they don't want to slog till 60 or 65. So there are different aspects to this. How do you look at this, Gaurav?
So we look at it in two manners. We talk to them saying that after your main career is over,
Hmm.
will you be stopping completely or looking at ancillary career?
Right.
A lot of them go on to become coach, commentator, even glamour world, they can do an ancillary business. If that's the case, there is no problem. Problem comes up when they are saying we are not going to do anything.
Okay.
Then there is a bigger emotional problem because these people are used to high public attention. So moment they are away from limelight, rather than money, it's the attention issue. And that needs to be handled differently. If they don't, they will feel money will solve the problem. Money will not. Money cannot solve the problem. So they will have to approach in a different manner. Look at ancillary options.
If I may just add to this, Pallavi, is that whenever we look at people who have a peak, earning period which is much shorter in there, actually the point to think about it is what is your lifetime earning actually. The interesting thing with a sports person or an actor or anybody who has a shorter earning period in there is that they are actually during that period earning far more, and then subsequently their earnings will go down. And I think when you are financial planning at that point in time, you have to tell them what is an endowment and what is your regular income. So they have this whole thing, which is they actually are building an endowment at that point in time. And that's where, again, it becomes very important to segregate how much of your nest egg is actually going to help you do this in future, survive you in future. And then the moment you put that part in place, the second question, which Gaurav very effectively said, because while you may have solved the problem of money, you haven't solved the problem of time because you will have time at hand. So how you're going to do that, that becomes much easier to address. But the concept is really if you have a much shorter and a higher earning period in your career where you are going to do this, actually it is no longer limited only to athletes and actors. Even in corporate life it is starting to happen because people are building a business, they're selling it, and they're getting that particular amount of money. And that point in time they really need to get this understanding of what do I need to run my day-to-day life and what is my endowment. And the moment you separate that out, things become much easier, and it becomes very important for them to do that in planning their longer term financial goals in there.
Sure. In fact, Vivek, just to add to this, since we are also talking about, you mentioned about corporates and otherwise also, but I would also like to add one more category who are working mothers. There, of course, a lot of them they face this that after maybe once they're 40 or 45, they start thinking of spending more time at home, maybe doing some alternate career or something, but they do think of retirement, early retirement. So, what is your advice for somebody who's planning to, retire early or maybe next 10 to 20 years? What are your suggestions? How to go about it? What can be done in 10 to 20 years time frame from now?
Very, very important. I think this is a part which is actually only getting highlighted recently now. If you look at it, financial planning, particularly for women and particularly for once working women, I think this is now becoming a critical discussion area. In fact, I know one of the ET series spoke about couples planning for their money, and I think that was really insightful because this doesn't come in active discussion. So the first thing that we actually highlight when we are talking about once working is that the family income actually is going to probably go from double income to a single income, and therefore it is first of all going to have an impact on lifestyle. Have you planned for that? Even before you go ahead and think how you're going to do this, have you planned for that lifestyle? So that's the first question to do. And the moment you start that discussion, you actually are able to understand what are the things that you need to take care of. The second part, therefore, it becomes is there may be actually some additional expenses that you may have to account for when you are looking at this planning. Because if you want to do something at home, you may want to have some help, assistance, a lot of other things which come into play in there. You may have to do your own marketing, your own brand building, and if you want to do something on your own, I think that becomes important. So I think the moment you put those questions and your goals become clear, I think then capital allocation becomes much easier to that. But you really, Palvi, I think this is a question which is only coming up now. 5 years back, when I would talk to clients and plan about finances, this was not a question which was prominent, but this is
Right.
now becoming very critical. I
Mhm.
just want to highlight an interesting, insight that we got. So at ED Live, we just did a survey in about 8 metros, checking with people if this COVID period has impacted people in their thinking of financial planning. It's very interesting that the understanding or the importance of financial planning, everybody has realized. They want to save more and they want to be active, but very surprisingly their confidence to manage it themselves has also gone up high. So
That's
they
a
really,
positive sign.
yeah, so they really think that they can do it themselves and they don't really need anybody's help in doing it. And it worries me because I think at the level of financial literacy and intelligence we have, particularly information's asymmetry which exists today in the market, I think
Mhm.
it's very important that they really seek expert help in there. I cannot emphasize that point more and more in this. Yeah.
Sure. So before we move on to the Q&A, one question for Gaurav. We're talking about people doing something of their own. This has also given rise to a lot of homepreneurs and mompreneurs. They are still working, but not from the boundaries of an office or something. They're working 24/7. They're working at home and for home. So according to you, Gaurav, what can be done in next 10 to 20 years? Like, of course, there may not be a fast forward strategy to plan your finances. It has to start on a daily basis, as you earlier also mentioned. But I also remember in one of your shows and your books also, you keep on talking about a financial date. Couples should talk more often. They should go on a financial date. Could you elaborate a bit on this, and how can individuals keep along their spouses so that they reach where they want to reach in 10, 20 years?
Pallavi number one, financial date is a concept which we also insist to our clients.
Mm-hmm.
And it's mandatory for them to come and meet us every quarter.
Okay.
In fact, in a year, if they miss 2 quarters, we don't renew the contract. We are very strict about it. And we insist couple comes together.
Mm-hmm.
We
Okay.
even encourage kids to come.
Hmm.
So we also have kids who are 7, 8 years old come because then they develop the habit. Now, the moment that happens, and they start saying we want to retire early or be on our own,
Mm-hmm.
then it's a mindset game. Because whenever somebody asks me at what amount I can retire, I tell them you can never.
Mm-hmm.
Or at what amount I can start on my own, well, I belong to a business family. And I tell them if you are seeking a security to retire or to be on your own, ये नहीं हो सकता. It's a different mindset. In job, we look at avoiding risk. We want security. When you're on your own, you have to embrace risk. अगर ये आपके डीएनए में नहीं है तो आप नहीं कर.
Mm-hmm.
Like I love to take risk. I feel job very unsafe.
That's your
Like
perspective. So,
irrespective of efforts I put in, I get same amount. I feel it's unfair. More the ability to, I would say, live with the uncertainty of money, more are the chances that you'll be a good entrepreneur. Now in
okay.
job you want certainty. तो ये तो नहीं हो सकता. मतलब then you'll end up doing some small things here or there, but you can't make it really big. Very few do it.
Right.
So financial date is for reviewing, but for being on your own, it's a different mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you are good in your profession or in your occupation, say if it's a RM of a bank, Now, he could be managing hundreds of crores of Corpus for clients.
Mhm.
When he comes and asks me, I want to be on my own, what do? I tell him, do you know how to appoint a bathroom cleaner? Because in my office, if one day, if that lady doesn't come, it comes to me. I know how to interview people. I know how to deal with compliance. I know my books of account. I know how to buy a technology, or I know people who do it. Once you are on your own, you have to look at all those.
Right.
Those do not succeed as entrepreneurs.
Mhm. That's quite an important and insightful, observation, which makes me start with the Q&A because we're running short of time. So let me start with you, Vivek. The first question to you is by Manoj. And Manoj says he's looking for some retirement solutions, investment options, and avenues. He also mentions that he'll retire in just the next 4 years. So 4 years, what could be the possible options?
I think Pallavi, if I was to give him a straight advice, I would say he should start planning on what is he going to do with his retirement corpus and how he can be efficient about it. Because I think 4 years is going to be really, really sharp for him. But yes, again, if his goal is very clear that he wants to do it in 4 years' time, I think he needs to look at today what is his available money, what is the lifestyle he wants to lead post retirement, and then come up with a financial plan, which will again entail allocating money towards the life insurance health needs first, then looking at the surplus money contingency fund, and then investing in money subsequent to that. It becomes very important to just people who are just about to retire or they're just going to look at retirement in the next 5 years. What is important for them to look at how they accumulated money is actually also important to look at them how they want to spend their money.
Right.
And there's a very classic example to that most of the accidents happen when mountaineers are coming down the slope rather than going up the slope. And I think that becomes very, very important to plan. So if he is ready with his financial money, his corpus, I
Right.
think he should actively look at how he wants to spend his money also uh, in there. That would be my advice to him.
Sure, sure. Next question is for Gaurav, and this is by Sushil Kumar Sachdev. He writes to us how to manage funds after retirement. He's already received his GPS accumulation gratuity and the last salary. So he wants to understand how much could be put in equity and how much could be put in debt. Since he's already retired, I believe he's 60. Gaurav, your suggestions?
Pallavi, since you mentioned my books are written there, your second inning in cricket is most important.
Hmm.
You need to protect your wickets and score more runs.
Right.
Now, in wickets, there are three stumps.
Hmm.
One, liquidity. Second, regular income. Third, growth. In retirement, you will need more liquidity to meet contingency. You will have to have regular income, and your corpus has to grow at a rate higher than inflation. Now, whatever is liquid or instant has to be in savings account linked to FD and maybe in liquid funds. Your regular income could be pension, could be annuity, could be any government scheme. Predominantly, these two will be debt-based.
Hmm.
Whatever is left can go into equity or gold. So based on your requirement, asset allocation will happen. I mean, if you have some regular income coming
Mm-hmm.
from pension or something, you will have more money for equity. If you don't, you need to put more for regular income. So
Sure.
protect your wickets and you will win.
Okay. Let's move on to the next question. This is by Rajesh Vaidya, and this one's for you, Vivek. He says he wants to know some plans or maybe some instruments that can help him build a healthy retirement corpus. But the time that is mentioned is 2028, so hardly 7 to 8 years in hand. Like it's already the beginning of 2021. So can somebody build a retirement corpus in 8 years? We already discussed how time plays an important role and how compounding can benefit in the longer run. But if somebody has thought of it now and maybe having 8 years or maybe 10 years in hand, your suggestions, Vivek?
Yes, I think the given time, without knowing what his risk understanding is, I think the basic rule of thumb will become that equity portion or the market portion will become a little bit restricted for him, because equity really needs a long term to play and give the benefits
Right.
in there.
Hmm.
I think, therefore, it will have to be, fixed income predominantly. He will have to look at those options. Life insurance products, as well as the standard government, retirement schemes which are available, they do allow a shorter period of time for investment, like 7 years, 5 years, and they can give you the option of, guarantee in there, because that will become important. Right now, I think in life insurance, there are products available which are helping you secure the current higher, longer term rates for you in this point at this point in time. We also offer some of those products in there, where you can actually secure them for 10 years or 15 years. I think you should use those instruments to be able to secure these long-term better rates which are available right now, given the interest rate scenario is going to be going towards lower rates. I think that's something which you should be actively looking at. I think he should already start looking at what kind of annuity options he can lock in right away, because now there are products available in the market where deferred annuities are also available. A 10-year down the line, what kind of income rates you can secure, I think that would be another option that he would I would recommend him to evaluate
Sure.
in there. Yeah.
So Gaurav, there's one more question for you, and this is sent by Varanya Singla. He writes to us, says how to calculate the monthly fund requirement at the time of retirement and how much corpus would be required. So since not much details are in here, what is your advice? How should he be able to evaluate that this much should be the monthly, SIPs or whatever amount that he sets aside, and what could be the retirement corpus? How to get to that ballpark figure?
Difficult. Unless we don't have the numbers, how
Hmm.
do we do that? Maybe he should draw up his own budget.
Okay.
The way I said my GDP,
Hmm.
look at my budget.
Right.
People spend hours and days discussing union budget.
Mhm.
They also spend time
Hmm.
looking at their company's budget and department's budget. They have no idea about their own budget.
Mhm.
So pay attention to my budget, which is your cash flow. Unless that is not in place, you won't be able to do anything. Develop that habit of writing a budget in your mind.
Sure.
Otherwise, how do I tell him the number? I mean, without numbers,
Sure. So maybe start journaling your budget and what are your goals can really help. So next question is for you, Vivek, and the question is by Manish. He writes, where to invest to ensure steady returns of at least 10 to 12% in next 3 to 5 years. So he's got a medium term horizon, or rather we could call it short term because just 3 years. What is your advice? What kind of instrument should he be looking at, Vivek?
Pallavi, if you allow me, I'll just make this question a little bit more broader, because it allows me to explain a few things which are critical. When people come to us and they talk about these 10 to 12% returns, and when they talk about these time horizons, I think it becomes very important for people who are investing to actually have return expectations which are grounded on some fundamentals, and they have to be realistic. So they have to understand, when you are looking at short term, and when you are looking at what kind of interest rate scenarios, inflation scenarios, what kind of return expectations you can get for a particular kind of risk that you are willing to take. So he wants steady returns, and he wants it in short term, and he wants to make sure that it is 10 to 12%, I typically ask this question, where does this 10 to 12% as an anchor return coming from? You know, and most of the time, this 10 to 12% anchor return is coming from because that's what they have seen in the past. And one has to really ask this question: when interest rates were at 9%, expecting 10 to 12% return on equity probably was a fair way of looking at it. Today, when interest rates are at 4.5%, you are asking a 10 to 12% return. Is that a fair way of evaluating? So I think that becomes a very important discussion, because most of the time, people feel disappointed because they are not able to make this kind of a evaluation in their mind, first of all. So my request to him would be, yes, it is possible. You have three factors which will decide your return in there. It is time horizon, it's your liquidity requirement, and your risk capability. If you are willing to sacrifice liquidity for longer, you can make a better return. If your requirement is that you have less risk that you want to take, it will compromise your return, it will give you lesser return. And if your time horizon is longer, again, you can go ahead and get better returns. You will have to make an optimization of these three. You will not get all three of them in one go in 3 years time, and you will looking at steady returns and 12 to 15% returns. I think you will have to make that mathematics by evaluating these three parameters.
Sure. So before we let you go, Gaurav, one last thing from you. Since this is also the end of the series, what is that one piece of advice you would like to give to the viewers to avoid glitches in their long-term planning? Come what may, despite a crisis like COVID-19, because of course this is a very different kind of a situation, but which has really made us prepared us for future situations. So one piece of advice to avoid any glitches in their planning.
Don't get overwhelmed by financial planning. Develop a simple habit.
Okay.
I'm part of media. Don't spend too much time.
Okay.
Look within, start looking at goals, and start small. It's like if I decide to walk for 1 minute a day as exercise, people say, kya baat karta hai? Increase it to 10, you're fine.
Right.
But the moment you say, kal se main 1 ghanta chalunga, 3 days in will stop.
Right.
Start small, you will develop big.
Yeah.
And don't let this play on your mind. Once you have a habit, you will make money.
Sure. So there's a famous saying also that small efforts every day, lead to big results. So starting is important, and starting small could be one more important aspect.
Even
Anything,
SIP
Vivek,
works
you want
on
to add to
same
this?
principle. Even SIP works on same principle. It's a habit.
Sure.
Recurring deposit, paying insurance premium. These are
Right.
Absolutely. I think
Vivek.
the discipline of investing is really, really important. I just want to highlight one point, which is very critical, is that money is emotional.
Right. Money is an emotion. Right.
Yeah, and the sooner you realize this, the better you will be. We tend to, this is a problem which every one of us has. Even though I may be a trained financial planner, but it still has that same issue that money is an emotional, matter. And there are two things. One, it's an emotional matter, and second, as human beings, we are not able to project our financial future, and that creates its own complications in decision making. I would just say that realize this, first of all, that money is an emotional matter, and I think you will make a good start on your financial planning. Stick to the plan.
Pallavi, I always say financial planning is not about finance.
Right.
Agree.
The entire, you mentioned yogic wealth, so I'm referring. The entire thing is not about numbers, it's your mind game.
Right.
And that's why I kept repeating my GDP in pictures. I kept repeating habit. These are something which is in mind.
Sure.
These are something which are life skills. Moment you have it, you are set.
Sure.
Thanks.
So 2021 has been a time which has really made us learn that financial planning is beyond numbers and we have to start at some point in time. This was a wonderful session indeed. Thank you, both of you, for taking time out and
Thank
coming
you.
for this discussion.
Thank
Thanks
you,
a lot.
Pallavi.
Thank you.